This meeting is being recorded.
Welcome to WRM. I'm your host, The Edward Jones, a certified life coach and host of this podcast. Whether you work in a private corporation, nonprofit, or operate as an entrepreneur, work relationships matter. My motto, work relationships work for those who work on them. My guest is Ebony London. She's an entrepreneur who operates an art studio that caters to the creative desires of individuals and groups. She is here today to share her thoughts and experiences that will be beneficial to you. Welcome, Ebony.
Greetings. Thank you so much for having me.
And I'm just so glad to have you. I know you are a very busy person, very successful, do so many wonderful things. But before we get into that, I always like to find out more about who people are when they were growing up, the people who influence them, or maybe events that help shape their lives to help maybe give that trajectory to where they wanted to end up. I've been to mixers where people have the name tags on, and the first thing they come up and ask me is, what do you do? And I've done that myself. But it's always important to know who people are.
Correct.
So what were the events or people that helped shape your life when you were coming up?
Well, I think that's an excellent question. And it's something that I recently thought about. My mother, all through our childhood, was creating. She created our clothes. She created puppets. She created hats that were put in other people's stores. And it didn't dawn on me literally till about 10 years ago that my creativity came from my mother, even though throughout my childhood, I was there and I saw it. So I would say my mother is where my creativity came from. My artwork is a reflection of hers because she also created dolls, people's figures. And if you look at my artwork, that's where it came from. So that's where I would say the most influential came from.
Now, did you create items when you were young on your own?
I didn't necessarily create items, but I was always into art. Recently, about 5 years ago, my mom sent me some artwork that I made when I was in junior high school. And it's still so similar to what I do now. I'm just more refined with it now. But throughout my whole childhood, I was always sketching. I was always coloring. I would see things and not just see a tree. I would see shapes and people in the tree. I would give trees personalities. So throughout my whole life, I've been creating in some way.
Well, that is really interesting. So throughout grade school, high school, college, everything, it was just always art. Because sometimes I ask the question, did your career choose you or did you choose it? It pretty much sounds like, I guess it chose you.
I thought about that as well. And it did choose me, but I also chose it because we all have a choice. Mm-hmm. Prior to me being an artist, I chose to be a licensed insurance agent. That was a choice. So I believe that I have the talent and the abilities to be an artist, but my choice was not that. It only recently became that within the last 5 years.
I'm really interested in learning more about that. That sounds so far from being an artist and an insurance agent. So talk to me a little bit more about how you got into that.
Well, I was a young mother. I was a licensed insurance agent for 14 years. Mm-hmm. As a young mother, the job that I got was the security that I needed. I had the benefits, I had the income that I needed to raise my daughter. I really didn't realize it until recently, but I suppressed a lot of my creativity to experience that part of my life of raising my daughter and providing. I didn't get to be the artist I wanted to be, but she is now 23 years old. And 5 years ago, once she graduated from high school, literally the second she graduated from high school, I quit my job. After 14 years of just writing insurance policies, my soul was dying. It had died. I was not supposed to be doing that. There's nothing wrong with doing that, but there was something wrong with me doing that. So I quit my job and I opened an art studio. I took all the little savings I had and just leaped and opened an art studio. So yeah.
And that is really interesting because to me, that would be a little bit scary. So talk to me about the emotion that you went through to make that leap from that secure insurance job to being on your own. Because I think there are a lot of listeners who maybe like you, who are in a situation where they don't really like what they're doing, but because of the security and the fear of going out there, that they don't do it. So what would you tell somebody who was in that situation where they had the secure thing, but then wanted to follow their passion?
Correct. Following my passion was the scariest thing that I have ever done. I walked away from total security, but I also walked away from a soul-sucking cycle of fear. And I just leaped. I don't want to make it seem like I just leaped and it worked out perfectly. This is hard. This is hard work, becoming who I knew I was going to become. This is being very broke. This is no one buying your stuff. This is questioning if you're good enough. This is hard. But working for someone else, doing what I did not like was hard too. I kind of just chose my hard. And this hard has been worth it, and it has paid off. It has been a lot of personal development that has gotten me here. It has been a lot of mentoring, a lot of study. I'm obsessed with success. And everything, I believe that everything has a formula, including success. And successful people have written the formula. You could read a book by a successful person and they are not trying to hide their formula from you. They'll put it in the book. And the reason why they do that is because they don't see it as someone being a competition. It's hard. What they've done to be successful is hard, and most people won't do it because it is lonely, it is broke, it is scary, it is isolating, it is losing friends and family. It is a lot to become successful, but also success is something that you define yourself. So I don't know if people would agree that my success is what would be equal to theirs. Their success is nothing like mine. I defined my success and then wrote some goals to achieve them and just start becoming that person. So, yeah.
Well, one thing I'm thinking about, and I think about, there is the operational side, the doing, but there's also that emotional thing that people go through when they do that.
Correct.
So I'm thinking about, you walk in, your daughter graduates, you say, I'm ready to go. And so you go and you're excited about the idea that you're moving towards what you want to do.
Correct.
But that emotion of breaking the break, and then the idea of walk me through those steps. You talked about mentors, you talked about reading, you probably went to workshops, you probably did a lot of things like that. And I'm just thinking about, people look at Ebony today and say, oh my goodness, I'd like to be like that, and have no idea about
No
the
idea.
journey. So spend a little more time talking about that journey from when you walked away to the times of being broke to moving into where you are today. What was that process?
Well, my job when I was a licensed insurance agent was literally to write policies. And I was on a final written warning because the policies that I was writing were not selling. I was on a final written warning for over a year. So every Thursday, my manager with the other managers, and they had a meeting, and every time after that meeting, they would come to me and say, Ebony, you're good for another week. You're good for another week. You got a job for another week.
What were you on? Why were you on for writing policies? Was it
Because I was given a product that I couldn't sell, but come to find out, hardly anyone else was selling it either.
Okay.
So, and this came after the fact. So I, every week I would, have just holding my breath, seeing if I had a job, because you can't play with a single woman's security. You know what I mean? Every week my security was just being, looked at. So I started to really develop some anxiety. Like I was really just full of anxiety. And I remember one day I was sitting at my desk. I had just came in, I sat at my desk and I couldn't move. It was a Thursday. I couldn't move. And so I end up going to Kaiser and I said, something's wrong with me. And Kaiser said, go to the psychologist or whoever that is. And I went to the psychologist and I'm sorry if I'm saying that doctor's name wrong or the title wrong. And they said that, don't worry, we have a lot of employees from that corporation here for the same reason. They're not going to fire you. And after they told me that, I realized that it was manipulation. And I started to get braver and I started to not be so scared. And that's when I also knew that I was done with this experience in my life. And I was ready to do something new because I was just tired of being afraid. So long story short, I end up taking my last call. And I never knew when I was actually going to quit, but I knew that I would know. And I remember taking this call and I hung up with the client and I said, that was my last call. I will never talk about insurance again. And I quit. And then the way that I got my studio, the invitation I got to get my studio was unbelievable. And that's a whole 30-minute segment itself. But I opened this studio, and for the first year, when I say it was the hardest year, because I had really no idea what I was doing, that's when I started seeking the mentorship. This is when I started listening to the podcast and listening to the videos and just learning so much. My vocabulary started to change because I started to emulate those who I wanted to be around. And when you can speak, people start to listen. And for like the first year, I remember no one came to any of my painting events. And after every event, and this is setting it up for 20 people, providing food, and only one person used to come, I would ask myself, what is wrong? What am I doing wrong? And I would try to problem solve it. Just, entrepreneurship is a bunch of problem solving. That's what you do all day, is problem solve. And eventually I looked at a piece of artwork that I did years ago. And I said, I wonder if someone would want to paint that. And so I just went to some website, made a little flyer, and then I posted it. So after a year, I posted this thing and in 30 minutes it sold out. And that's when I was like, ding, ding, I figured out the formula. I figured out the formula of how to get people into my painting events. I have to allow people to draw themselves and customize themselves. And it has been a success ever since. So that's where it started. And then I added my ear art. I just started painting on some wood and putting a hook in it. And then someone bought it and I said, oh, maybe I could do some more. And that blew up. And then of course I have my fine art that's a whole story behind that. But I am a fine artist more than a painting event person or ear art person. I paint fine art. And even that's a process that only recently happened. Although I've been painting for the last 5 years, I've been very patient with the flow of my success. I haven't rushed it because my presentation of how I want to present it is very important to me. I'm not in a rush because I want it to be done correctly. I'm sorry if that was a lot.
No, that's good. I think that's excellent because there, as I said before, there are people who are just like you. In fact, I actually coached a person who was it's almost identical, but they are at that stage where they haven't made the break yet, but they'll probably make it in the next year.
Correct.
And so when I listen to what you're saying, I'm thinking, that person will definitely benefit from what you're saying. So it wasn't too much information. It was like, I'm sitting there thinking, my goodness, this is perfect.
I appreciate that.
But let me ask you this, your preparation, you mentioned fine art. and so I know about your ear art and things like that, and actually seen some of your stuff. But fine art, how did you learn to do that, or how were you prepped for that? Did you go to school to do that, or is it just something that came naturally to you?
Well, in regards to the fine art, again, I've always created in some small capacity, but many years ago, I was introduced to this artist named Jerry Simpson. And I showed Jerry Simpson my art, and he was unimpressed. He started mentoring me because he was where I wanted to be. So after I got off, over my little being offended, I listened to him because he was right about everything he said. He introduced me to color and the fearlessness of color. And he introduced me to big canvases. And that's where my fine art has, that is the influence of my fine art, is Jerry Simpson and his art. So if that answers the question.
Well, I think the thing of it is one clear lesson here is humility. That you had to have humility to be able to say, okay, this is disturbing what you just told me, but I'm willing to listen.
Correct. I think humility is a huge part of success with not only myself, with anyone. You have to admit that you don't know it all to learn anything. And I am more than happy to do that even today. There's people younger than me that I learn a lot by, or a lot from, I should say. And I have no problem saying I don't know anything or know something, and I will sit there and listen. I went to visit Jerry at his studio gallery every week. Every Thursday I was there for a whole year learning. I didn't even say stuff most of the time. I was just watching how he moved and how he spoke to people and how he sold his art and even how he painted. I was a very good, quiet mentee. And I'm not a young, I'm not young, I'm 42. And this all just occurred in the last 5 to 7 years. So I wasn't a young mentee. I was someone who was older and set in my ways in many ways. But I wanted this so bad. And he had the formula for success in the art world that I wanted to be in.
Okay, so that during that year when you were trying to set up these events, you're also going to watch him.
Correct.
So these are two things that are happening. Now, I think the thing of it is, and this is the part that would be scary to me, and it's probably scary to listeners and those who are thinking about stepping out there. You took all your savings to do this. You got a year you're going through, and no one's coming to your things. And you go and you just say, I'm going to try problem solve. What I'm doing isn't working, so I'm gonna do something different. And I'm gonna keep doing something different till something catches. But the savings are kind of going down.
Yes.
So that is the emotional thing. It reminds me of the Tyler Perry story when he was trying to do these plays, and he had the last dime. He's sleeping in his car. And the day he wants to do it, the weather's bad. But he put something out there, and then all of a sudden, people start showing up. And it's almost like your story kind of sounds like that people start showing up just when you're at the breaking point.
Yeah, just at the break. It always happens like that.
Okay.
You know what I'm going to say? That's not true. It doesn't always happen like that, but it definitely happened like that for me. Okay. Because there was absolutely no plan B. I was going to figure this out because I was not going to go back to writing insurance policies. That wasn't even an option. I didn't even keep my insurance license renewed. I just let it expire because I did not want that to be a fallback. When you really want something, you sacrifice for it. And I sacrificed a lot of myself and my thoughts and my free time and everything to become who I've become. When you are at your lowest and nothing's working, that's when something in the back of your mind starts thinking of thoughts that you have never thought before. It starts bringing ideas. You start seeing potential in everything. because you're at a, I don't want to say desperate time, but you need to figure this out. And you need to figure out the formula now, because I'm not going to be able to eat tomorrow if I don't figure it out today. The reason why I was able to, and I am very, very excited in regards to entrepreneurs having multiple streams of income, because that is what has kept me afloat. I have 3 parts of my creativity. I have Ebony London, the fine artist. I have Ear Art by Ebony London, and I have my painting events. So I believe in order to be a full-time artist, you have to have those 3 things: a service, a product, and your fine art. I don't get to make and sell $10,000 paintings every day, but people buy $50, $60, $70 pair of earrings daily. People want to book events for painting events mostly weekly. Do you understand what I'm saying? There's different streams of income. So that's the reason, or that's the way I was able to stay afloat when I first began. I wasn't getting the painting events, so I said, okay, I'm gonna start painting on some earrings. Let's see if that works. And it started working. And then I was like, okay, let me focus on my fine art, and then that starts selling. And then all of a sudden I have these 3 streams going at one time. And that's how it worked.
Well, great. Now tell me, they say that sometimes as an entrepreneur, you work harder for yourself than you'd ever work for someone else. Would you say that was true?
Absolutely. I spend, and I'm a full-time entrepreneur artist. And out of the 24 hours a day, I am working at least 16 to 18 hours a day. It just doesn't feel like work. Okay. I was doing this in my free time when I was working. Mm-hmm. So for me to be able to add an extra 9 hours of doing this a day is nothing to me. I love it. And that's when I understood what my passion and my purpose was. I absolutely love this, and I'm in awe that I get paid to do it. Yes,
it's like they say, if when you find what you love, you never work a day in your life.
I don't. I literally don't feel like I work a day in my life, but I work hard.
Right. Now, one thing I think I'd be remiss if I didn't ask, you talk about the formula. Yeah. Talk about a little bit, I think you probably hit pieces of it already, but for those who are interested, they said there's that formula. What is the formula for you?
The formula for, I want to say success, and not necessarily me, is to define success first. Everyone should have their own definition. My formula, or my definition of success, I should say, is me spending my day doing everything that I want to do and not having to worry about income. That was important. That's literally how I want my life to go.
Okay.
So when I decided that was my definition of success, I started researching, not what other people's definition was, but how other people accomplish their success. And it had a lot to do with learning, understanding your philosophies, getting mentors, changing behavior, setting goals. Setting goals is the number one thing. I have weekly goals, daily goals, yearly goals. I have a goal that's going to take me 15 years to achieve right now. And I got to become someone really great to achieve that goal, but it's still a goal and it's written down. And I think a lot of people, and I don't want to get off the subject, but a lot of people don't understand how they have choices when it comes to being who you know you are and who you want to be. You can decide that. When I recall sitting at work and writing insurance policies, and I was thinking, this is not my life. This don't even sound like me. Like, this makes no sense. And it wasn't until in the last 7 years that I realized I had a choice. I thought it was forced to be there, but it was a choice for me to be there. So a part of success is understanding that you have a choice, period. And sometimes you have to eliminate a lot of things in your life. And this is part of the formula. Eliminate a lot of things in your life to become who you want to be and who you know you are. And it really is about goal setting and setting yourself up to achieve those goals.
There's persistence as well, is what it sounds like. Now, You mentioned the person who you watched every day and everything like that is a mentor. What information did you read? Do you have people that you listen to, follow? I know Les Brown is somebody that somebody follows, and the different people that people follow and listen to. Is there any guru? What was it? That guy who was uh, Think and Grow Rich, Napoleon Hill, I guess it is.
My favorite book.
Like,
I know Think and Grow Rich verbatim.
Okay.
That book is beyond genius. It should be taught in schools at junior high school level. That's how amazing that book is. And what I listen to are my mentors. They weren't encouragers. I don't need motivation. I'm already motivated. Me not having a job motivates you. I needed wisdom and knowledge.
Right.
So like Napoleon Hill's Think and Grow Rich, that's wisdom and knowledge there. It's not hyping me up to become more than I am. I'm already good at that level. But I just wanted to learn. I wanted to be able to listen to trigger words and learn new vocabulary and learn new ways to look at things.
Right.
So
now, how do trigger words help you?
Excuse me?
You mentioned you listen to trigger words. How did that help? And tell me what a trigger word is and how it helped you.
Trigger words are words that bring back a memory to me.
Okay.
And it's not a memory of a childhood or anything like that. It's a memory of a scenario that I could repeat differently. Like if I could do it, I would say, instead of saying this, I would say this. So it could be a trigger word that someone else has said, and all of a sudden I go back and I remember. And I'm able to express it a lot better now because I've listened to that and understand what it does to me. So I don't know if that explains my trigger word, but yeah. Even the title, Think and Grow Rich, it triggers something in me.
Well, Think and Grow Rich, what would you say would be the key takeaways from that book? And so maybe other people would be wanting to read that or listen to it on audiobook.
Correct, and I totally suggest that. Is to have that goal that is so big, so enormous that it takes you a lifetime to achieve.
Okay.
I have my goal. I'm not gonna share it, but I have my goal, and it is going to take me a very long time to achieve. But most people don't have not even one goal. Most people just survive their day. Most people just survive their relationship. Most people are just in survival mode, and that is understandable. But if you could get out of survival mode and just really start living and developing yourself, I do a lot of personal development daily. I am nowhere near the person that I want to become. I'm happy, but I want to keep growing because I have nothing else to do. There's nothing else to do but to keep developing as a person. If you're not doing that, you're just waiting. And I don't really quite know what you're waiting on. You have to keep developing. So just having a goal and personal developing yourself to become someone worthy of that goal. That's what my overall take from Napoleon Hill's Think and Grow Rich is.
That's great. So I think I already know the answer to this, but I'll ask it anyway. And that is, what do you find most rewarding about the work you do?
Most rewarding, the work that I do brings people into my life that we affect each other. More than any painting event or any peer art or my artwork, I love customer service. And more than that, that's why I get repeat customers. It's not my art, it's my service. It is how people leave me feeling. When people put on a pair of ear art, they leave feeling good. They feel like art, you know what I mean? But it's the process of them even picking out and me helping them pick out the ear art they want. And being able just to spend my day doing that is amazing to me. Just creating art and talking to people and communicating and having people come into my space and taking my art into other people's space, that's amazing to me.
And it's all about relationships.
It is.
That's what it comes down to. So I guess the idea of relationships matter. You could do my tagline for me.
And they do matter. They matter. And from a client to a person that I get materials from, it matters.
Right.
You have to leave people feeling a good way, and then your business grows. They'll bring you business. So.
Right. Absolutely. So, Ebony, what have you been doing and what's coming up for you?
What have I been doing? So recently, I have been working quietly on an art exhibit titled Alphabet. It's 26 pieces. And for 5 years, I've been working on that, and I had not shared it with anyone until about a month ago. So that's what I've been working on quietly. And right now I am sharing my fine art. And in addition to that, I am still making ear art. The holiday season was a huge season for ear art. So I'm still doing that and replenishing my inventory for that right now. Still doing painting events. The painting events are going wonderfully, so wonderfully that I am trying to motivate others to become instructors. Every 4 months, I do a workshop where you can learn to start a paint party business. I love teaching people what I know. And it's such a good business to get into. So I encourage that. Any workshop that is done at Ebony London Art Studio is a workshop that encourages entrepreneurship. You should be able to take the skills in this workshop and just start a business if you want to. So.
Well, excellent. Ebony, the half hour just went by so fast, and you're so enlightening and so encouraging. I know that the listeners would definitely be excited and ready to move forward. Your story is very, very touching, but you make it just a way that people can kind of understand it and understand the journey. And the journey obviously continues, but you definitely were inspiring. Let me just leave it there.
I appreciate that. And I appreciate you allowing me to, take some time and space in your business and talk to me about it. I think what you're doing is excellent and it is needed in the workspace.
Absolutely. So if people want to get a hold of you to learn more about you or about your business, what would they do? What website, social media, what would those be?
Everything that you need to know is at ebonylondon.com.
Okay.
It gives you information about myself as an artist, my fine art, my ear art, and my art studio. Everything is done with a push of a button. So you don't necessarily even have to talk to me, but everything is there at a push of a button. You can also follow me on my Instagrams. I have one for Ear Art by Ebony London Art Studio, and Ebony London Fine Art, and the same for Facebook. But if you want to know details, just go to the website.
Excellent. Ebony, thank you so much for sharing your time with us.
Thank you. I appreciate you.
Again, this is the Edward Jones, certified life coach and host of this podcast. To learn more about my coaching business, and Ebony really touched on it well about how relationships matter, go to www.prodestinycoaching.com. That's www.prodestinycoaching.com. Take the work quiz, then contact me for a complimentary consultation. But remember, work relationships work for those who work on them. Have a great day.
This meeting is being recorded.
Welcome to WRM, Work Relationships Matter. I'm your host, the Edward Jones, a certified life coach and host of this podcast. Whether you work in a private corporation, nonprofit organization, educational institution, or operate as an entrepreneur, work relationships matter. My motto, work relationships work for those who work on them. My guest today is Talib. He is founder of Exploration in explorations in education. He is here today to share his thoughts and experiences that will be beneficial to you. Welcome, Talib.
Thank you, Edward.
I'm so glad to have you here. And for audience full disclosure, Talib is the president of the Toastmasters Club that I'm in. So I've got a chance to know him do that, but he does so much more. Now, I got to know a little bit about him. He has had in a lot of different things, successful with what he does. But Talib, what I like to do is find out who people are. Have you ever gone to those mixers when you got the name tag on and someone says, hello, my name is, and then they say your name and they say, Talib, what do you do?
Mm-hmm.
That's the first thing that people do. But what I'd like to know is who people are. And what we do with them, we start with in the beginning, that there were probably people, events that influenced you when you were young that may have informed your future. So Talib, tell us how it all began from when you were a youngster, people that may have influenced you or events that did it, that kind of helped shape your life.
Well, Edward, when I was a young man, I really didn't particularly care for school, which is interesting when you realize I became a teacher. When I would finish a day of school, what I liked to do was go out into the woods and go exploring. I was always curious. But luckily, throughout my school years, I had some teachers that encouraged this. They helped me develop my curiosity and turn it towards education. Now, I never imagined I would become a teacher, but that's where I ended up.
And it's very interesting that the name of your organization is Explorations in Education, and you were out exploring as a youngster.
Exactly.
So what did they do that kind of sparked the curiosity, the interest, and got you interested in learning?
As far as I remember, it was just taking an interest in who I was and looking at me and seeing how I was working on the problems. So I know in 5th grade, I struggled a lot with math. Well, I had a teacher who really took an interest in that and helped me realize the reason why I was struggling in math is I needed glasses. Now, I've since then gotten off of those, but I couldn't see the chalkboard. And once she figured that out, it became a lot easier for me. In 6th grade, I had a teacher who really encouraged the creativity inside of me, which I had really neglected up to that point. 7th and 8th grade, again, I had teachers who really took an interest in how I learned and helped me develop that. So I became excited about education.
Now, it's interesting. So it seems that you were almost a magnet for teachers.
Well, I probably wasn't the best student. You know, it's always those students that need the little extra help that get the attention. And I don't know if I'm proud to say, but I think that's where I fell. I think that I gave some of my teachers a run for their money.
Oh, so you're kind of a little bit of a bad boy for a while there, huh?
Well, I didn't act up on purpose to be bad, but if I didn't get it, I ended up being the class clown a lot of times. And I have to tell you, I'll be honest, I prefer those type of students. If somebody's cutting up in class, that's a message to me that I go, oh, okay, so you're not understanding what I'm saying, and so you're going somewhere else with it. Let's look at that. Let's explore it.
All right. And that's very interesting because, again, that seems to do true to form that how people grow up informs their future.
Yeah.
So going through school and then after school, college, other things like that, how do those things impact you?
Well, coming out of high school, I did a few quarters of junior college, and I have to tell you, at that time, it was just coming off the Vietnam War. And I saw my older brothers, neither one of them got a degree. Well, I'm sorry, my oldest brother didn't get a degree. My next oldest brother got 2 degrees. He had a dual degree in math and computer science, but he couldn't find a job because everybody wanted experience. There was a glut on the market at that time of young men with degrees due to the war. So in the wisdom I had, being 18, I said, well, I don't need a degree. I'll go get experience. Unfortunately, at that time, experience available to me were gas stations, working as a busboy, doing basically laboring work. Later on in my career, I realized, well, I'm not going to get ahead if I stay there. So I looked around, and since I was in the Bay Area at the time, I thought I need to find a way to get a job in the Silicon Valley whole thing that was exploding at that time. And so I got a job in an electronics firm. But again, I didn't have a degree at that time. And so I was doing sub-managerial work. But if I wanted to go ahead, I needed to get a degree of some kind. So I did that for 5 years. And all of a sudden I realized this isn't what I want to do with my life. This doesn't excite me. Even if I were to make good money at this, this isn't what I want to do. And so I walked in one day and just quit. That led me to doing a number of different things, but now I was really starting to follow my heart. And I ended up in a small foods co-op, which was really aligned with my own personal goals of being useful in the world. But stocking beans didn't excite me either. So after about 5 years, I decided I would try something else. And at that time, what came across my radar was education, particularly Waldorf education. I found about a program in Sacramento here where you could become a trained teacher in 2 years. And it was working in private schools, so I didn't need a formal degree to actually be in the classroom. I went there and discovered I really loved it. And that was the start of my teaching career, and I've been doing that now for over 35 years.
So how did you, it's just like you were just sitting there. I mean, you obviously, that beginning was interesting from electronics. That would have, I don't know where that would have led you, but if you don't like it, then it's not a good place to stay. Mm-hmm. But it's almost like you had the, I don't know how I would say that, it's trying to do good things in communities, et cetera, while you went to the store. But then with the Waldorf, it's just that you were just searching for things. And you said you saw it and you went to it, but how'd you get there? Because what I'm thinking is there are people out there who may have a path similar to yours. Oh, okay. And they maybe want to find something. So kind of walk me through how you made that transition from stocking beans to becoming a trained teacher.
Well, I'll tell you, actually what happened is I sat down and I did a lot of thinking about this, meditating, and I came up with 3 criteria. I said, I know I want to do something different. And I said, what is important to me? I started looking at my values. And what I realized was I had these 3 things. 1, I wanted to do something that had a positive effect in the world. Mm-hmm. I wanted something where I knew I was changing the world for better. 2, I wanted something where my moral life, my inner life, my spiritual life, if you were, was aligned with the work I was doing. So I wasn't being one person at work and another person at home. Mm-hmm. And finally, because I'd been doing some volunteer work as an outdoor educator in a nature preserve, I realized I really enjoyed working with children. So that was my 3rd criteria. I wanted to do something with children. So I really started holding these 3 ideas in my head and looking for things that met all of them. Now, I wasn't actively looking, but I was holding this, and honestly, one day somebody came through my line at the grocery store, and she knew me. She'd been in there a number of times, and she said, hey, can I ask you a question? And I said, sure. And she said, have you ever heard of Waldorf education? And I said, no, tell me about it. And she said, I don't know anything about it. I just heard about it from somebody else, and it sounded like something you should look into. And that was it. I looked into it, and I went, this is amazing. These are the things that I'm trying to find time in my life to do. And here there's a program that will teach me them so that I can teach them to children.
So the lady must have known something about you and your personal journey to be able to make that recommendation.
I think so. It may have also just been sort of an intuition. So she had heard about it and she suggested it, and I looked into it and realized that this was a way I wanted to go. Now, during the transition from stocking beans to becoming a teacher, it was a real rocky path a lot of times. Things didn't go smoothly. First off, we had to move. We had to sell off a car. We had to get to a new place and reestablish ourselves in a new community. Had to find a place to live. Had to get a job so that we could support ourselves while we were going to school. Because my wife came and, along with me, did the teacher training at Rudolph Steiner College here in Sacramento.
So it wasn't just you had to convince your partner that this is a good thing to do.
No, actually, it didn't take a lot of convincing at all. I'd been showing her the literature and I'd been talking about it. And one day I came to the decision. I said, I'm going to do this. And she goes, not alone, you're not.
Okay. Well, that's good. That support is always very good.
It is. Well, it was something that she enjoyed as well. In fact, we both look back on those 2 years at the college as two of the best years of our life. There was a lot going on. We were really busy. We were our living situation was really nice with a friend. And there were some great things to come out of that.
Right. And that's really, and one of the things that you said that is so important that people get lost in, and that is that people many times do the work for the money and they're miserable. Because I worked at an organization, and the perks were great. And they called it the velvet chain because the salaries, the benefits were just great. But the main thing people look forward to were the vacations, the time
Right.
away from work. And so for you to find something that is compatible with your obviously you're comfortable, you get your daily bread so that you can survive, but you're doing something that I guess I consider your calling.
Yes. I definitely would consider that. When you talk about a vocation, that word means a calling, vocation. I really feel like this was a calling in my life. But I think those sometimes come and you have to make sure you're listening for them. And I think that's what was going on with me was I was actively listening for this is what I want. Where can I find that? And the calling came. And then it takes the courage and the gumption to follow that calling.
Right.
And to go through. Now, be aware, it hasn't been roses in my teaching career. There have been a lot of times when there's been difficulties. When actually after the first school I went to, after 2 years, I needed to leave because we found it wasn't a good fit, my being at that school. And then I went to another school and stayed there for 7 years, or 5 years, excuse me. And that was a really good fit for as long as it lasted. So I've been, at this point, I've been in 1, 2, 3, probably about 6 different private schools, and now I'm working independently. But each one of those, at the time, that's where I needed to be, but I needed to listen for that, maybe my time here has shifted, I need to go somewhere else, and listen for that.
Right, and that really is good because the thing, and one of the things I talk about are obstacles that people run into, and in anything you do, there are going to be bumps in the road. I don't care how much I like it, no matter what it is. Even I used to think Disney World would be the greatest place to work, but people tell me they've got issues down there as well. But the most important thing that you have is that if you love what you do, and if there's a bump in the road, you still love what you do. It may not be in that place, but it's what you want to do.
Yes, that's certainly true for me. And that's one of the things every time I found, there's an old adage that every time a door closes, another one opens. I found that to be true for myself, but it's not instantaneous. A lot of times there's a real period in between where you're really worried about, well, where the heck am I going next? What's going on? Or there was a period in my life when I actually had to leave teaching for a while because I became ill. I had cancer. Thank God that's all passed, and I've recovered from that. But again, that was a point when I thought I knew what I was going to be doing, and life said, no, that's not where you're going. And I had to sit with, well, what does that mean? And that's what led me from the classroom to being an independent teacher, was that year of having to focus on my health, and then coming out of that and then going, well, now what do I do?
Listen, I want to follow up on that one, but before I get there, the one thing that I want the listeners to be aware of, and that is when the going gets tough, and if you really love something, then you know it's your calling. Because a lot of people, if they're doing things and something gets rough, oh, well, I guess I'm not going to do that anymore. But it's almost like no matter what the obstacle, it's the Marcus Aurelius quote, the obstacle is the way.
Right.
That with the obstacle that you find a way to keep doing what you're called to do.
And that's an ongoing question. And I call it discernment. I mean, everyone calls it discernment of, all right, is this obstacle telling me I need to do something different, or is it something I need to overcome? Is it something I need to go through, or go around or go over or go under. And like you said, part of that has to do with, what does my heart tell me? I still want to teach. I know I want to teach. I can't teach in the way I was because for whatever reason, there were a number of things that came up that would make me shift my position. But I knew in my heart I still wanted to teach.
So what is it about teaching that is so rewarding for you?
You know, I think, and it maybe like you started this off saying what helped me when I was a child, part of it is that joy of discovery. And I love sharing that. Nothing makes me feel better than to see a child's face light up when they finally go, oh, I get what you're talking about. And they become excited about the subject matter. Whether that's doing a drawing and they finally learn how to draw in a way that they enjoy, or talking about astronomy and the latest discoveries in space, or just looking at the stars, or a math concept where they finally go, oh, now I get it. To see that in a child and know that I helped engender that just really fills me with joy. One of my personal adages is that if I've made a child laugh sometime in the day, that was a good day. I did good work in the world.
And how do you deal with that? There's one in every class, that problem student that just does not care that school is kept or not. They just are disrupting the class, doing all those kind of things. It's almost like they're trying to make your life difficult. How do you deal with that student?
Well, that student doesn't exist.
Okay.
I'll be honest with you. Because the reality is, for each student I've encountered like that, they are a person. They have a particular reason why they're acting out. And if I can discover that and help them over that, then that's the way I can get to them. So, for example, sometimes it may be so let me give you an example of a story. So I had a student, and he wasn't one of those students. He was an excellent student, always supported my work, was very calm, quiet, not so quiet, but he was enthusiastic, did all his work really well. One day I was giving them their homework assignments and just telling them, writing on the board, this is what you have to do, this you have to do, and he slams his hand down on the desk and shouts at me, how dare you think we can do all this? I don't know what you're thinking. And it was so out of character for him. Mm-hmm. Now, I have to tell you, inwardly, I was shocked. I was hurt. I was angry. I was ready to yell back at him. But I realized in that moment, something's going on here. And if I don't know what that is, I'm not going to be able to respond appropriately. So I paused and I looked at him and I said, please step outside the door. Just wait outside there. I'll be with you in a minute. I have to give everyone else their assignments. I want to finish this, and I'll be out to talk to you in a minute. So I finished telling the whole class what they needed to do, and all the while I'm thinking, I wonder what's going on with this. And as I walked to go outside, I realized I don't know. I have no idea why he would act like this. Now I could go out there, guns blazing, and yell at him for being so disrespectful and disturbing the class and taking away the time from his classmates. But I thought, I don't know what's going on. I really don't. And so when I got out there, one of the things I realized, especially in the middle school years and even into high school, what I'm doing is I'm not only teaching these children math, science, social studies, English, I'm also teaching them how to be adults. So I went out there and the first thing I said is, my gosh, I'm so sorry. What did I do to upset you? It blew him away. He was expecting the yelling, the screaming, the punishment, my telling him how he was wrong. What he didn't expect was me to come to him and say, what did I do wrong? And I really was looking at that. I was genuinely curious about what had I done that caused this reaction in him. And so he blustered for a few minutes, and I said, well, wait a minute. My understanding, correct me if I was wrong, is I was just giving you the homework, and it's homework you've done correctly in the past, never been a problem, but you became very upset. Is that right? He goes, yes. I go, great. Well, I just need to let you know, if an adult had talked to me the way you just did, I would assume they wanted to punch out my lights, that they wanted to have a fight because I'd done something to offend them. So I'm curious, what's going on? And at that point, tears appeared in his eyes. He didn't fully cry, but he got really quiet. He says, I've got so much going on. And he started listening. I've got this and I've got that. He was a star pitcher on his baseball team, and he's got a big game coming up. And his mom enrolled him in swimming and all of this. And he says, and then you gave us all this homework. And I said, well, great, don't do it. It's fine with me. You're a great student. Don't do this assignment. It's okay. And at that point, that shifted. When he realized that I was going to work with him to make him a success in that class, he went, no, I want to do it. And I go, don't. Or, you know what, if you can't, just do half a page. In the end, he said, I'll do what I can. I said, that's fine. And I said, now we're going to go back in there. And he says, okay. And he composed himself. And I said, now you do understand you're going to need to publicly apologize to me. And he goes, absolutely. He came back in, stood up before the whole class and said, Mr. Ruff, I'm very sorry for the way I acted. And I said, that's fine. Thank you very much. Have a seat. And we went on.
Now, that story always actually brings chills to me when I think about it. But the one thing that I want to ask, and we're going to go back through a little bit of that, why was it necessary for him to do the public apology to you?
Because he had publicly called me out.
Okay.
And again, I'm educating the whole class on what it's like to be an adult. If I find myself in a situation where I know I have done something that's really out of not only out of character, but if I blow a situation up bigger than what it is, I like to go back to the person and apologize and say, I'm so sorry. And if I do it in front of a whole crowd of my peers, I need to acknowledge that. I need to be transparent with them. I made an error here. I'd like to apologize. Now, I didn't make him grovel. I didn't want to I wasn't shaming him, but I felt like he needed to publicly in front of everyone acknowledge my behavior was beyond what needed to be done there. And I told and at that point I said, and if any of you ever have trouble, if you feel like the homework's too much, approach me. Tell me that. Don't just blow off the assignment. Don't yell at me. You're always free to come to me and say, hey, I'm having a hard time finishing my assignments. What can we do? And together we work on a strategy. So your question was,
how did you learn how to do that? Because I'm thinking that there are so many teachers who would have behaved the way that, the traditional way of yelling, sending to the principal, et cetera, et cetera. Is that something you learned in teacher training, or is that something that is just something that came across you at the moment?
15 years of failing at it.
Okay.
There really was a big part of this. I'm sure you've heard and maybe shared with your listeners this idea that success is a series of failures. Mm-hmm. It's not a straight line. You've got to fail and fail and fail. When I first started, I knew this whole idea of being a leader to the children and an educator and helping them discover the joy of that. Mm-hmm. And that's when I came in with the ideal. But when they started acting up, I was at a loss. I didn't know what to do. Even though I've been given these different strategies, I would just fall back on what I was raised with, which is, shut up. Now, I never yelled at a child, but that was my internal reaction was, you need to be quiet right now. I'm trying to teach. Mm-hmm. And I would try different strategies, and some worked and some didn't. And what I found, like I said, by this time, I'd been teaching for a number of years. I had come to a point where I went, you know what? If I don't know what's going on with them, I can't help them.
Right.
Now, I'll be honest with you. There's a lot of times I've come to these brilliant ideas on my own, and then I go back and look at my notes from 15 years ago at the teacher training, and it's right there in the notes. I'd written it down in class. But there's something to be said about lived experience, about, oh, I understand now. I know what it feels like to try these things and have them not work.
Right. It's one thing to have it in your head, but it's another thing to have it in your heart and your spirit, because the emotion of that moment when someone strikes at you, your natural reflex is to respond in kind.
Right. And this is something, you asked where I learned this. This has been part of my learning, both in my teaching, but also just in being with other people, just relating to others, is when there's a disagreement, when something feels off, curiosity is much better tool to use than attacking.
Okay.
You know, becoming curious. First off, why am I so upset? What's going on that's really bothering me? Where did I get triggered? And then secondly, if they're really upset, so what's bothering them? And being truly curious. Not coming at them going, well, what's your problem? But really saying, help me understand. I don't understand why this is such a big deal for you. And if I can, yeah, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, do you work with parents too? Because I just think about the student and I think about the parents, and it's a lot of times, you know, my wife was a teacher and sometimes the parents were helpful, sometimes they weren't. So that example you gave was excellent. Now, how do you work with parents, or did you work with parents?
I did. The working with parents, well, there's often a story that half the work is with the parents, half the work is with the curriculum, and half the work is with the children.
Okay.
So you hear there's three halves.
Right. I noticed that.
And that's teaching. So you've got more than you can do.
Right.
So working with the parents, I have to bring the same sort of sensibilities. If somebody is coming to me frequently about their child and they're really concerned about them, and I don't see this, I don't have the same concerns, I can't just tell them, well, you shouldn't worry about that. It's fine. I have to really explore with them. Why is this of concern to you? What's going on? And again, sometimes it's something I haven't seen. Sometimes it's things that are impacting the child or impacting the family situation that I need to know about. I had one young girl, it was interesting, in the classroom, and anytime we played any sort of game, she always ended up in tears. Always ended up in tears. And I had to look at the child and say, so why is this? What's going on? So I started really observing her closely, and I noticed she was always happy and having fun as long as she was winning. And the moment she lost, which could just be getting tagged in a tag game, she broke into tears. So I brought this to her mom and said, I need to just talk to you, just bring this up and say, have you seen this? Again, bringing curiosity. Have you seen this behavior at home? I'm noticing that little Sally here is having a hard time anytime she has any type of failing, and it also shows up in her schoolwork then, which is a problem because as a teacher, one of my jobs is to bring them stuff they don't know, to bring them to push the edge of what they understand. So you're always at that edge of, I don't know what's going on. And so this often she would end up in tears. And the mother, out of our conversation, said, well, I've never seen that at home. I don't know, she has no problem when we play board games at home. And I said, really? She goes, now, and then the mom paused. She thought about it. She said, I do have to say, I never let her lose. I always just change the dice rolls or move her ahead, so she's never experienced losing at home. So at that point, I had to have a conversation with the mother about as the parent of this child, that's your choice. You can give her that experience as she grows up, and that will give her a certain experience. But you might want to consider what the consequences of that are. I have to make sure that I bring that in a way that I don't shame the parent, that I don't, as long as it's not, I wouldn't say that was damaging to the child. I don't think it gave her fair footing for becoming an adult. And if I can bring that to the parents in that way that I share, I just want to let you know from my point of view, you might want to reconsider that.
Right. Those are excellent. I guess there's so much more I want to explore with you, but in the little time we have, talk to me about explorations in education, what that's like and how you work with the students in your own entrepreneurial venture.
Right. Well, this came out of, remember I said earlier I was sick and had to spend time on my health for a year. Coming out of that, I realized I didn't want to go back into a full-time classroom school situation, but I didn't know what to do. One day I got an email from someone who had seen me speak at a homeschool conference, and she said, I would love it if you could teach my child. My son really made a connection with you, and I've got about 5 other parents who would like to put their children in the class. Would you develop a class for us? And at that point, I thought, well, that's a good idea. I could do that. So I developed a curriculum, came up with a class. We did that, and they liked it so much, I started doing these on a monthly basis. So I would develop a class, they would sign up, we would do that. And then it was really by word of mouth. I didn't see this going as far as it did in as little time as it did. But what happened was the people that I taught liked it, and some of those students I am still teaching to this day, and that's been over years. In fact, there's one student that I was teaching in that situation, and he was in 5th grade. He's now in college, and I still do some tutoring with him in algebra.
Excellent, excellent. Talib, this has just been outstanding. There's so much more I think about. I just think that, I don't know if you do teacher training, but teachers could benefit from the things that you have as well. But if people wanted to learn more about you and what you do, how do they contact you?
The best way to contact me is directly through email, and I'll give you that email. It's TAHuff, HUFF, at DCN, like Davis Community Network.org. TAHuff at DCN.org. Or they can go on to outschool.com. Outschool is all one word, and that is an online learning platform where I have a presence. And if they just explore classes, and then under what classes are you looking for, just put my name, then I come up. And then if you scroll all the way down to the bottom, there's a ask a question of this teacher, and then they can contact me that way.
Great. Is there anything else you'd want to leave with the audience before we part here?
I would say stay interested in life. Be curious. I've hit that once already, but one of the things on the tagline I have on my materials is I support lifelong learning at every age. And I think even when you're in your 60s, 70s, and 80s, you can still learn something new, though I have to tell you from personal experience, it's a little more challenging.
But lifelong learning is so important. Talib, thank you so much for being my guest today.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me, Edward.
And again, I am the Edward Jones, certified life coach and host of this podcast. If you want to learn more about my coaching business, go to www.prodestinycoaching.com. I have a work relationship quiz. I encourage you to take that, and then let's have a conversation about that. Look forward to the possibility of talking with you. But remember, most of all, that work relationships work for those who work on them.